I couldn't believe what I was reading. My own parents, people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had sent me a text saying I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. Just like that, I was erased from what should have been one of the most important days of my life. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, heart pounding, trying to understand how they could treat me like I didn't matter. Anger bubbled up so fast it was almost intoxicating, but beneath it, there was a deeper ache, a betrayal that cut sharper than any knife. That's when I realized this wasn't just a snub. This was an insult, a statement that they didn't care about my happiness at all. And right there, with tears blurring my vision, I made a choice. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Have you ever been completely shut out by the people who are supposed to love you most? What would you do if your own family treated you like you didn't exist? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Before that humiliating text, my life had been pretty ordinary, but happy in its own way. I'm Hannah Lawson, 28, living in a small apartment in Chicago, working as a freelance graphic designer. I loved my quiet routines, Sunday brunches with friends, and occasional weekend road trips to clear my head. Family was always complicated, but I tried to make it work. My younger sister, Maddie Lawson, was the golden child, effortlessly charming, beautiful, and somehow always getting exactly what she wanted. My parents, Charles and Diane Lawson, had a way of making me feel invisible. I thought I had accepted it, but I never expected them to go as far as excluding me entirely from Maddie's wedding. The day I received the text, my heart sank. I remember scrolling back through old messages, trying to find a hint that this was coming, but there was nothing, just their cold, curt message. You're not invited. Maddie wants a small wedding. It stung more than I wanted to admit. I replayed every interaction, every smile I faked for their sake, wondering why I hadn't been enough. My parents had always prioritized Maddie's happiness, but this felt like a deliberate, cruel choice. That's when I realized this wasn't just favoritism. This was a statement. They thought I would quietly accept it. But deep down, a spark ignited. I wasn't going to let them disrespect me like this. 4 days after that message, I felt like I was living in a fog. Every conversation with my parents was tense, each word loaded with the reminder that I wasn't welcome in Maddie's life in that moment. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just a wedding, a fleeting event. But the sting of being excluded by the people who were supposed to support me was sharper than I expected. I felt small, insignificant, and so deeply frustrated. Friends noticed the shift. Lila, my best friend since college, kept asking if I was okay. "Hannah, you don't deserve this," she said more than once. And she was right. It wasn't fair. I tried to reach out to my parents, to ask why I wasn't invited, to plead, to reason, but every attempt was met with vague excuses and cold indifference. The harder I tried, the more invisible I felt. Anger slowly started to replace the sadness. I remembered all the times I had been overlooked, the dinners I was told to skip, the achievements quietly praised to Maddie, but not to me. I realized this wasn't just a wedding, it was a pattern. My parents had always made choices that put Maddie on a pedestal and left me in the shadows. But then something shifted. That simmering anger began to feel like power. I started imagining what it would be like to turn this humiliation around. What if they couldn't ignore me anymore? What if I had the final say? The thought of reclaiming control over a situation they thought they dominated made my heart race. I wasn't going to cry quietly in my apartment anymore. I wasn't going to accept being excluded or made to feel less than. For the first time in a long time, I felt a strange excitement amid the anger. This wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about standing up, taking action, and showing them I mattered. And in that quiet fury, my plan began to form. I started thinking carefully about how to make them see me, really see me. I couldn't just storm in and demand attention. That would be predictable. No, this had to be clever, unforgettable, and entirely under their noses. Every detail of Maddie's wedding became a puzzle I wanted to solve. I began researching venues, vendors, and catering companies, pretending it was casual curiosity while secretly envisioning how I could turn the entire event on its head. I even started noting every little thing Maddie had planned, from flower arrangements to seating charts, committing them to memory. Each small discovery fueled my determination. I imagined their faces when they realized the person they had tried to erase had actually taken control of the one thing they thought excluded me from. It wasn't just revenge for being snubbed. It was about reclaiming my dignity, proving that being overlooked wasn't going to define me. With every passing day, the plan in my mind grew more vivid, more intricate. I could almost see it, the moment when they'd realized that their attempt to ignore me had backfired spectacularly. The day of the wedding was bright and ridiculous, exactly the kind of day Maddie would have picked. I pulled up to the gates of Rosewood Hall feeling oddly calm, the kind of calm that comes from knowing the moment is finally yours. For months I'd worked quietly. Offers through a broker, late-night calls with an attorney, paying deposits, signing papers. No drama, no spectacle. Just a deed in my name and my signature on the title. I had bought the venue Maddie and my parents had been bragging about for weeks. When they arrived, in their perfect clothes, stiff smiles intact, I was waiting inside with a clipboard and a small, perfectly polite smile. Diane's face went white the second she saw me. Charles tried to play it off with a joke that fell flat. Maddie's smile froze like a photograph. "Hello," I said into the hush, my voice steady. "Welcome to Rosewood. I'm Hannah. I own this place now." Whispers rippled through the guests. Heads turned. Someone gasped. My parents' confusion shifted to anger, then to an ugly, public scramble. Charles muttered about paperwork, about mistakes. Diane looked as if someone had peeled her skin back. Maddie, who'd spent months planning every ribbon and rose, realized in a heartbeat that the one person she'd tried to erase was the one who now held the final say. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I handed my mother a printed copy of the deed, then a program that listed the reception timeline, and, discreetly, a single reserved table at the front with my name on it. "You said I wasn't invited," I said quietly, loud enough for them to hear. "So I bought the place. If you want your wedding to go on as planned, you'll respect my terms. If not, the venue is no longer available." Maddie's face crumpled between anger and humiliation. Guests shifted, absorbing the power flip happening before them. My chest unclenched in a rush, laughter bubbling up at the absurdity of it all. The control they'd wielded over me for years was gone. In its place was a quiet, fierce satisfaction. They were forced to face me, acknowledge me, and, for once, include me, because they had to. When Diane grabbed Charles and stormed toward the valet in a flurry of whispered apologies and furious planning, I felt something heavy break inside me. It wasn't cruelty, it was closure. I'd turned their attempt to erase me into a moment that made them look small, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Sitting alone in my car after the chaos, I let out a deep breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a strange mix of relief, pride, and clarity. This wasn't just about winning or humiliating my parents and Maddie, it was about claiming my own worth. For too long, I had allowed their favoritism and careless cruelty to dictate how I felt about myself. Today, that ended. I realized that revenge, when executed with patience and cleverness, isn't about anger alone. It's about empowerment. It's about taking control over situations where you've been sidelined, showing that being ignored doesn't make you powerless. Buying the venue wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It was proof that I could turn disappointment into triumph, hurt into action. At the same time, I understood that revenge comes with reflection. I didn't want to become someone who hurt others for the sake of satisfaction. Instead, I focused on the lesson: never underestimate your own agency, never let others define your importance, and sometimes, a bold but calculated response can be the most effective statement of all. This moment taught me more than just how to flip a humiliating situation on its head. It reminded me that self-respect is non-negotiable. I'd reclaimed mine, and in doing so, I realized that standing up for yourself isn't just about revenge. It's about proving to yourself that your happiness and dignity matter, no matter what anyone else says or does. Weeks later, life had settled into a new rhythm. One where I felt stronger, more confident, and unapologetically in charge of my own happiness. The wedding went on, of course, but under my quiet watch and with a few boundaries I had set. My parents had learned, the hard way, that I wasn't someone to be ignored or dismissed. Maddie avoided me for a while, but eventually, even she had to acknowledge that I had claimed my place, not out of malice, but because I refused to be erased. I kept the venue in my name, renting it for small events, birthdays, and intimate gatherings. Every time I walked through the halls, I remembered that day, not with bitterness, but with pride. It had been a turning point, proof that I could assert myself in a world where people often underestimate quiet determination. Even my friends noticed the difference. Lila said I walked taller, laughed freer, and carried an air of confidence that was impossible to ignore. I had learned that empowerment comes not from shouting the loudest, but from taking deliberate, bold actions that shift the balance of control in your favor. The experience taught me to value myself above the judgments and exclusions of others. I stopped waiting for approval from the people who had once sidelined me and started creating my own moments of triumph. The scars of that betrayal faded into lessons of resilience and ingenuity, shaping me into someone who no longer needed validation to feel worthy. Sometimes, revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about finding yourself again and refusing to be invisible. That day, I learned that standing up for yourself, even against those closest to you, can be empowering in ways nothing else can. I hope my story reminds you that your worth isn't defined by how others treat you. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to erase you or ignore your presence? How did you respond? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories where resilience, cleverness, and determination take center stage.